Well, I got another Jensen in the mail today, and it's a fairly rare Jensen 35. Um, from my observations over the years, I would consider this fairly rare since I've only seen probably one other like it. Um, it's a typical late 40s. It would be this one right here that I'm focused on. It's a typical late 40s Jensen 35. It has a seldom seen type of cord. I've only seen this in the late 40s, this cloth covered cord with the little white I guess you'd call it a two stitch spot on the cord. Um, Typically post-war 35s have this type of cord, and then they went to the rubber cord. But what makes this particular 35 stand out is the flywheel. It's a cast iron flywheel, nickel plated, but it's only a ½ inch wide, and it's machined along the same lines as the die-cast flywheels of the later engines in the 50s. These are also ½ inch wide. There are Jensen 35s with nickel-plated cast iron flywheels like this one right here. These flywheels are 5/8 of an inch wide, and they have a pulley machined on them, but this flywheel here is identical to what you would find on a Model 25 or say even a 55, those engines. Whereas this cast iron flywheel has a smaller pulley, deeper groove, narrow width, very close in dimensions to this. Like I said, I've only seen, I think, one other 35 with this narrow cast iron flywheel. And since I got this engine today, I figured I would get the rest of my nice 35s out and show some different variations. Starting in the back, this oldest to newest. This is what would be considered the forgotten 35. This has been found in two different versions. Nickel-plated boiler like this one, and with a raw brass boiler like this Transition 35 next to it. I have yet to find a forgotten 35 with an unplated boiler. Took me a long time to get my hands on this one. When they go through eBay, they are big bucks, so can't buy every one of them, and they don't show up very often. But this engine probably dates from about 1935. Cast iron base, has the ceramic hot plate heater under the boiler, which is just a ceramic piece with a piece of nichrome wire wound back and forth between it, and it just sits under the boiler, kind of like a stove burner. This one is also a single acting engine. You can see the back of the piston. The steam only acts on the top of the piston, just pushes it out. And of course, nickel plated boiler, or riveted boiler. The whistle is different also in that it has a spring on it, but the spring is retained by a screw in the end. One of these days I might make a video on the evolution of the Jensen whistle, because it changed forms so many times. And like I said, this here is a Transition 35 with a brass boiler, not plated, riveted. This has the next style of whistle with the spring with the retaining wire on the end of the shaft there. And also, these earlier flywheels on these three right here are 3/4 of an inch wide. And then post-war they were, well, actually pre-war also, shortly pre-war, they were 5/8 of an inch wide, and then of course the half. These two here are very similar engines. They're both considered transition 35s because of the shorter firebox, but it has a separate smoke box chimney stand on the back. Whereas the Forgotten 35, the smokestack rests on the safety valve. And these transition 35s also wooden base, and they have the Jensen decal on them. These have the typical 1930s cords. I believe it's a Leviton cord, and it's black with gold stripes, and I believe there's 5 stitches in each gold stripe. That is a hard cord to find. I search for those cords all the time, and it is hard to find that exact cord. Also, on the Forgotten 35, it has this brown cord, which is a cord that you'll see on some very early Jensens, like say 1935 or so. They did have these brown cords on them. And after the transition models, then we get post-war and the 35 with the cast iron flywheel and this type of cord. And these also have the very hard rubber plug on the end, whereas these early ones use a Bakelite plug. I believe this one's been replaced, but this is a typical Bakelite plug you'd find on a mid to late 30s Jensen. This post-war Jensen has the decal, just as the pre-war also do. Another thing about these post-war Jensens is the nails used to secure the firebox and the smoke box down to the wood. They are a spiral nail. A real pain in the butt to get out if you need to work on them, but they can be done with some finagling. Otherwise, this engine here is a fairly typical 35. This has the nickel-plated brass smokestack. No sight glass guard. We hadn't added those yet. And then we come to the one I got today. It's styled more like the later ones, the only difference being the flywheel and the cord. Same wooden base. Now they have a UL sticker on them. And this one appears to be a water transfer UL, because there's not much, you can't really feel an edge to it. But these later ones, and you can see this UL sticker is a lot more vibrant in color, but it has a definite edge. It's definitely like a paper label that's stuck on there. And let's see, this engine here with the narrow cast iron flywheel still has the spiral nails holding the smoke box down, so that definitely makes it a little earlier than these over here. And these have the nickel-plated screws, And of course these all have the brass name tag on them. There's that one and this one also. This one here even has Phillips head screws holding the firebox down, and I've seen that on a few others also. A lot of these engines I have original boxes for, so I'm fairly certain these were never monkeyed with or pieced together or whatever over the years. And this one also is a little different because it has a routed edge on the wood base, which you don't see too very many early 50s or late 40s. Well, early 50s are going to have probably plywood on them, but there's not very many solid wood base 35s that have a routed edge. A lot of them are just rounded over, like this one and this one. And this one here just has kind of a bevel cut on it. Mr. Jensen decided to get a little fancy at some point, apparently. But these all have the wire sight glass guards, which were always thought to be Korean War era, but this here is definitely late 40s, so I don't know how that played into Korean War or not. I thought that was always early 50s, but the story was that he switched to these wire guards because brass was in short supply and he couldn't get the flat sheet brass to make the typical guards that he produced, so he used wire instead. But well, and the safety valves have changed quite a bit over the years. These are fairly wide and have a straight knurling on them. Oop, there we go, now you can see it. And then this one here is probably a little less in diameter, and it has a crosshatch knurling. And this one I believe is the same. These two are both the same. And then the diameter was reduced even more for this one. And then we have this one here that is a larger diameter, but not plated at all. So that's the beauty of collecting Jensens. You just never know what kind of variation you're going to find, and that's what keeps me on the hunt for them. So hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting to see the different variations, and I sure do enjoy hunting for them. So till the next video, see ya and take care, and thanks for watching.